In this video, I'm going to show you the power of using frequency separation with Affinity Photo. Utilising frequency separation, we will treat a case of acne to reveal pristine skin. If you would like to practice, then there is a link to the project file in the description below. If you enjoy this video or find it useful, then please like and subscribe. Okay. What is frequency separation? Well, let's take a look. First, let's duplicate our background. Right-click on the layer and select Duplicate. This is for reference and backup. And then, with our new layer selected, we'll go to Filters and Frequency Separation. And we'll take a look at what frequency separation actually is. Basically, what frequency separation actually does is to take a single layer and to create two layers from that single layer. One layer will be a high frequency or detail layer, which Affinity Photo shows on the left, and the second layer is the low frequency or colour layer. So Affinity Photo will extract detail from your selected layer to create two new layers, which I refer to as the colour layer and the detail layer. Okay, let's zoom into the image a little bit and move the split across, like so. Now, if we look in this area and notice the radius is set to 2, we do have a little detail, and the right-hand side has been softened. If we increase the radius like so, as you can see, as we increase the radius, we get more detail on the left side, and the right side becomes more blurry. We have a more detailed detail layer and a more blurry colour layer. It's as if it's extracting detail from the image and placing that extracted detail here on the left, whilst leaving the remaining colour on the right. This is really useful, and that is the basic function of frequency separation. Now, what we're trying to achieve here is to split the detail of the spots and the skin. Let's just move this down a second so we've got a better view of this spot and hair. Move this across. We have the detail of the spot here on the left and the colour on the right. Now the trick here is because we're trying to split the skin detail from the skin colour, which will allow us to remove the colour, remove the redness of the spots, whilst retaining the skin detail, pores and hairs. What we actually need to do is to adjust the radius like so. We should just bring up the radius slowly until we're at a point where we have just enough detail. And I think here that will be about 7. In fact, I'll just type 7, which gives us just enough detail if we take a look here in the spot and the skin, whilst leaving most of the redness behind. Now, if I actually increase the radius, go right up and take more and more of the detail away, now the problem is that on the detail layer we're getting far too much of the redness, which is what we don't want. We want to get rid of the redness. So the trick is to set this to the right value, which in this case is 7. And now, as you can see, we have very little redness in the detail layer. Most of it is left behind in the colour layer. And in the colour layer, we don't have the fine detail of the spot, the hairs and the skin pores. And doing this allows us to treat these two layers, the two layers that will be created, as separate entities. And we will be able to remove the colour without removing the skin detail. It's a balancing act. But with a little practice, you get used to setting the correct radius to separate the correct amount of detail from the colour. Okay, let's hit apply and see what we have. Ctrl 0 to centre the image. And if we take a look, we end up with a high frequency layer and a low frequency layer. The high frequency layer is the detail and the low frequency layer is the colour. So if I just zoom in and uncheck the high frequency layer to hide it, you can now see the colour layer, which is slightly blurry. And if we re-enable high frequency, it brings back the detail. It's like magic. And so onto our first job, which will be to remove all of the red blotches from the skin. Right then, first a little organisation. I'm just going to hold down Control and select the high frequency layer and the low frequency layer. Then right click and group. And the reason I create this group is because it will allow me to use this checkbox to quickly turn the group off and on for comparison. Okay, skin cleaning. Let's choose our low frequency layer, which is the colour, and then select the patch tool. Now the patch tool is in the tool menu here. Now if you can't see the patch tool, then just hold down and select the patch tool from this list. It may be displaying the in-painting tool or something else. I've found the patch tool to be the best tool for this type of work. And using the patch tool, now remember we're on our low frequency, the colour layer. Now to set up the patch tool, all you have to do is make sure that it has all of the settings in this settings area here, exactly the same as these. And you'll be okay. And then draw a patch around the red blob. And then move your mouse to another part of the skin to fill that patch. I think I'll grab mine from just here. And already you can see that by grabbing a patch of skin that looks like it could fit with the surrounding area, if we just take a little look at before and after, that has got rid of a lot of the redness. It looks better already. Now I'm going to do a few smaller patches to blend it in with the surrounding area. The idea here is just to bring in patches of skin into the area of the redness to blend in much better with the surrounding skin. And I don't want to be playing with these handles. Not yet anyway, I'll show you them soon. Now this section here will take just a little longer than the rest as it's quite a broad patch. A large area, and I really would like it to blend in with its surroundings. I'm grabbing patches from different positions, different directions to make sure there are no discernible edges so it blends in really well. And that's pretty good. It now blends in reasonably well with the rest of the skin. And that's the basics of blending the skin on the colour layer. It's not hard. So now, as you can see, all we are left with is the detail of the spot and surrounding skin. Let's take another look. The redness has gone and we're left with the detail of the spot itself, just the texture. And to get rid of this detail, the spot texture, all we do is to select the high frequency layer, the texture layer or detail layer. Then we create a patch around the spot, click on the surrounding skin and bingo! The spot has gone. And we'll do a few more patches from the surrounding skin just to blend it in nicely. And as you can see here, we haven't actually smoothed the skin. We've created a sort of camouflage, hidden it. What we've done is to remove that spot and replace that spot with skin that belongs there. And we've achieved this effect using the low frequency or colour layer and high frequency or detail layer and frequency separation. Let's select the low frequency colour layer and remove the redness from the rest of the image. Okay, so let's look at the real magic of frequency separation by getting rid of this patch here. Let's just zoom in, make sure we have our low frequency or colour layer selected, and then select the red blotch and find a nice piece of skin to replace it with. And that looks pretty good. I just want to reset this scale and the rotation. I don't want it rotated. There we go. And if we now just zoom out to take a look and turn the group off and on, we can see that most of the red has gone. But if you look, turn it off and on, the red has gone, but it's left all of the hairs and the skin detail, the pores, etc. And that's the magic of frequency separation. We can remove most of the underlying colour, or enough, and leave us with enough detail to play with. Now let's just try that again. We'll try it on this spot here. So if I just grab a nice patch and then grab a little skin colour from over here. And as you can see, off and on, most of the red has gone. We're quickly reducing the amount of work left to do. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to whiz around the skin and remove all of the spots and the splodges, all of the red marks, or as much as I can get. I'm going to go one by one, like so, one by one, removing the red from the colour layer or the low frequency layer. Just circle an area and find a source, and we'll go into this eyebrow, take a closer look. We'll select all of this and then select a source. As you can see, all the hairs remain, but the red has gone. Okay, so let's just continue around the skin, isolating all of the red blobs. There's no set way. We're just trying to make this skin look as even as possible. We're not playing with the detail, just the colour here. And I'm not trying to make the skin look uniform here. Well, not too uniform. I'm just trying to make it look realistic, as if we've just removed the acne. And this will take a little time. It's quite time consuming, but once you get the hang of it, you can whiz around the skin quite quickly and have this sort of job done in a couple of minutes. After a while, it becomes second nature. It doesn't take long to pick it up. And already, let's sort this red nostril. I don't like that big red area there. Just a couple of little patches and that's looking pretty good. Now her nostril isn't all dark and red. Now I suppose I could have sped this up a little bit, but I think it's helpful to watch the process. Let's just make sure we get right into the hair area and make sure all of that is done. It always amazes me how well frequency separation works with hair. And just get rid of all of these little spots of colour in the forehead. Bit by bit, we'll get there. I'm just trying to create an even, but not smooth, an even and natural skin tone. It's really easy to overdo it with frequency separation techniques and end up with a plastic face. And in Affinity Photo, frequency separation is much easier than in Photoshop. In Photoshop, you have to use convoluted methods or actions. It's really nice. Well, this is taking a while, but I think the results will be worth it. Well, I hope so. Now, I'm doing this for demonstration purposes, for the purposes of a video, and you could spend more time and do a much better job. Make sure to do this little area around the eye. Nice. At the moment, I'm just going around the cheek. Because it's such a big area, it's so obvious. I'd like to get rid of any obvious colour splodges and spots and areas. I'm going to try just getting rid of this redness here. No, I liked that before. I'll put that back. It's just evening out everything that I can, making the colour on the skin look natural. I think we're more or less done. Just a few more points in the neck area. Well done to anyone that's stuck with it and managed to watch this process of evening the skin colour all the way through. I think we've done a pretty good job in the time we have. We've managed to leave the skin looking reasonably natural, getting rid of the majority of the red splotches. I'm just finishing off a few on the cheek, but I think that'll do. Time for the reveal. I think you'll be surprised after just removing the red from the skin, the red blobs. Let's take a look. Before and after. Already we've got rid of all of the red, or most of the red, and left her with her natural skin colour and texture. So the next job is to clean up all of the skin detail and remove all of the spots. I'm going to zoom into the image and start here with this obvious spot. Okay, so select the high frequency or the detail layer And let's draw a nice patch around the spot area like so. And then we'll move over to this bit of the hair here for a match. Then click and bingo! We've got the hair back, and now we can use the handles to rotate the patch and align the hair. There we have it. That hair is now seamless. We've got rid of the spot, but we've left a pristine hair. I think that looks really nice. And now all we have to do is to continue on the high frequency or detail layer to clean up all of the detail in the skin. Patch the detail in all of the little spots. There's a clump of dry skin there, a few bits here on the forehead, and a couple down here on the nose that I'd like to get rid of. Again, I don't want to go too mad with this. I'm just cleaning up the obvious parts. I do want it to look natural. Clean up a couple of patches on the cheek. Blemishes really do stand out when you have large areas of skin. Again, I'm not trying to create perfect skin here. I'm not trying to make it look like she's been made up by a makeup artist. I'm just trying to remove all of the blemishes so that her skin looks nice and clean. Zoom in, just clean up a few of these little areas around the eyebrows. And we have a little to do over here in the hair. Now, sometimes they don't need to be aligned, but in this case, I think it does. There we go. That's not bad at all, but I think we could go into the low frequency and just lighten the underlying colour with a patch. That's better. And let's take a look. And we're nearly done, I think. A couple of patches here that I'm not keen on, just a quick clean of those. And I think we're about done. We've cleaned up the skin. If we take a look before and after, we've cleaned up all of the skin and made it look pretty natural. Now I think I'd like to make the low frequency or colour layer a bit smoother. Now again, I'm not trying to make porcelain skin, I'm just trying to even out this area somewhat so it's not so blotchy. So I'll go into the low frequency and then add a filter. So I'll select live filters and bilateral blur. And the radius I'll bring all the way up to 100. And as you can see, that completely smooths out the low frequency or colour layer. And that's because we've placed it just above the colour or low frequency layer in the stack. The bilateral blur has a tolerance value. So if we bring the tolerance all the way back down to 0, it blurs nothing. And the more we bring it up, the more we increase the tolerance value, the larger the details it will blur. The bilateral blur allows you to blur areas with lower detail whilst keeping areas with higher detail intact, depending on the tolerance. So this has smoothed the larger, lower detailed areas whilst keeping the higher detailed areas, such as the eyebrows and the nose, intact. Unfortunately, it's given the skin the porcelain plastic look, which I've been trying to avoid, so I'm going to bring down the opacity to 50% or so. There we go. And I also don't want this blur everywhere. So I'll turn the blur panel off. Now all filter and adjustment layers have their own masks, which is really handy. So what I'm going to do, with the bilateral blur layer selected, I'm going to press Ctrl and I to invert its mask. And that will remove the data from the mask and get rid of the blur. Then I'll turn off the high frequency so we can just see the bilateral blur layer. And now what I'm going to do is to grab my paintbrush, like so. Make sure my opacity is 100, flow 100, I'm going to set the hardness to 0. Then I'm going to make sure my paintbrush is white. White paints onto masks. And then I'll just switch over to RGB actually. Make sure I have white selected. And then I'm going to paint over all of the major areas of the skin. Just make the brush larger using the right square bracket. And as I paint into the skin, onto the large areas of the skin, the cheeks, etc., you can see that they are becoming smoother. The filter is coming back through wherever I paint white onto the mask. I just don't want the effect at all in the detail areas such as the eye sockets and lips, etc. And for the purposes of this video, I think that's fine. Take a look, off, on, and if we turn the high frequency layer back on, and as you can see, the skin is looking a little smoother, a little less blotchy, but without looking completely and utterly fake. And I think it's looking pretty good so far. Okay, so the very last thing I'd want to do is to even out the skin tone overall. As you can see, her skin tone is sort of red and yellow. And I think it would be nice for her if we just evened it out a little bit. And I'll do that with a couple of HSL adjustments. So adjustments and HSL. Then I'll select the reds as I'm going to move the reds towards the yellows. So select the reds, get the picker and select a red on the skin. And I don't want to be adjusting yellows, so I'll just reduce the scope of the zone. And as I want as much red as possible, I'll just move this side right around. So now I just have these reddy colours selected, which should be the reds in her skin. And I'm just going to move the hue shift to the left to move the reds slightly towards the yellows, like so. Now let's just make a couple of adjustments to the range just to make sure we have the correct areas selected. Just to shift this left and right until we have the best selection. The same on this side, because skin tones are not just red, they're going to the purple and pinks. Okay, just a tad too much in the blue here, so we'll just bring that back. And what we have done, if we just turn this off and on, we've taken the majority of the reds and made them more yellow, so we've evened out the skin tone. But we don't want yellow skin, so the next thing we're going to do is to create another HSL layer and go to the yellows and with the picker, pick the skin, the yellow on the skin, then alter the range, make sure we don't get any of the reds, we only want yellows and oranges. And once we have the correct range and fall off selected, we go down to the hue shift and move it slightly towards the reds. And just by moving that yellow range over to the reds just a little bit, it's made the skin colour look more natural. And if we select both of the HSL layers by holding Control and selecting both layers and turning them off and on, I think you'll agree we've evened out the skin colour quite nicely. Okay, I think that will do for this tutorial. Thank you for sticking with it. Let's take a look at the whole thing, turn it off and turn it on. And I think we've done, in the short time that we've had, we've done a really good job. We've got rid of all of the acne, leaving her with even, or pretty even, and natural looking skin. And that is the power of using frequency separation with Affinity Photo.